Hello, hello, I'm Andrea Dell. In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 things I learned from my first trip to the ER as an adult. If I went as a child, I did. It was after I fell off a haystack. And I don't remember a lot about the trip to the ER. As an adult, I do remember, and I'm going to tell you about it and what it has to do with business, because there is a lesson here, a very important one. If this is your first video with me, thanks so much for watching. My name is Andrea Dell. Like I said, I'm the secret weapon of high-octane, mission-driven women entrepreneurs who need relationship-building, income-producing written content. I'm also a content coach who helps up-and-coming mission-driven women entrepreneurs create their content. I coach them with it because they're not in a position to hire a copywriter yet. So 3 things I learned from my first trip to the ER as an adult. Well, let me tell you a little bit about what happened. I was coming back from CrossFit and feeling really good. It was also a very stressful time in my life. I just moved, my client workload was pretty intense. And the combination of moving and having a full plate of client work, I think, was a factor. I strongly believe that. But I was driving back from CrossFit and my mouth, both of my lips started twitching. And if you looked in the mirror, you wouldn't necessarily see anything, but I could feel them. It was bizarre. It was as if it was some kind of muscle spasm. And then after that went on for a few blocks, I started feeling really weird. And I didn't know what it was, but it was just, I do now, but I didn't then. So I pulled off the road into a grocery store parking lot that I went to a lot. And just in time, both of my arms from upper forearm all the way through the fingers, they started feeling the way, this is the closest I can come to describing it. If you've ever sat on your hand or folded your leg under in a weird way and it's fallen asleep to where it's just totally numb, and then you start moving it again to wake it up, and the tingling is painful. It was like that, except even worse. That's the closest I can come to describing it. And my heart was racing. That was the weird thing I was feeling, is my heart rate suddenly just shooting way up. And weirdly, my hands, they kind of froze like this. I could bend my fingers, but it was very painful. And they just wanted to stay more like this. So making a fist probably wasn't going to happen. So I pulled over to the grocery store, I dialed 911 and asked for an ambulance because I thought I was having a heart attack. Not overweight, ate very healthily, worked out, so there wasn't anything that should have been causing a heart attack. But I know the symptoms of a heart attack are more complicated than what you see in the movies with someone on their left side or their left arm going numb. There can be pain in your jaw, in your back, and weird things like what I was experiencing. So called an ambulance, and this led to my trip to the ER. So when the ambulance got there, interestingly, this relief washed over me, and the tingling in my arms and hands and the frozen fingers just started backing off right away. So that was interesting. The timing of that is hard to ignore. But I was ambulatory, meaning I could walk, so I got up and went into the ambulance, and they ran a couple tests, and the oxygen levels in my blood were very high, well above 90%, which usually isn't the case if you're having a heart attack, is my understanding. So they took me to the ER. And here are 3 things I learned from that experience. The first one was that I wasn't managing my stress very well, or it may not have happened. Stress is something that I think we throw the word around, oh, I'm stressed, but it can really do a number on your body. And this is actually not the first time that stress has done a number on my body. I've had some other big turning points, thankfully not that many, but I 3 that I can think of for sure, where stress led to this crazy crazy response in my body. And this was one of them, this trip to the ER. So that's the first thing that this reminded me of, is that stress, when you let it get out of hand, which I don't think anyone sets out to do, but it tends to be, we take on this, and then our mindset about things, we worry, we get overwhelmed, we this, we that, and it ends up being a recipe for health issues, mental and physical. So that's the first thing I learned, that it's so important to manage your stress. And it was more of a reminder, hey, you need to manage it. And interestingly, that experience for a time made me incapable of feeling overwhelmed, because it just wasn't worth it. I was feeling very overwhelmed in general at that time. Second thing I learned was that there are benign heart things. Now, they're actually not, they don't put you at risk for a heart attack, but they can lead to things like your pulse suddenly elevating. There's one, I forget the name right now, it's SVT maybe, but don't quote me on that, but it's where the electrical impulses that impact your heart beating just misfire a little bit and the heart starts racing. And I know of one gal who contacted me after all this and said that sometimes when she jogs, her foot will just hit the pavement and boom, this benign heart thing happens. So I don't actually know if I have anything, because if it is this one they mentioned, then it's extremely difficult to diagnose, or it was at the time that I went to the ER. Maybe in the last few years it's improved. So I don't know for sure that there's anything like that with my heart. I actually got some heart tests a couple years later, actually closer to 3 years later, and they didn't find anything. So there's nothing blatant to suggest, but at the same time, I didn't know that there were benign heart conditions. I thought you either had one that put you at risk of something or you didn't, and it's not quite that simple. There are some benign ones that can be difficult to diagnose, don't put you at risk for a heart attack or heart surgery or anything like that, but they can mess with you a little bit. And this one they told me about while they were trying to figure out what was happening with me was one of them. All right, so that's the second thing I learned. The third thing I learned is kind of weird. It has to do with the fact they gave me they put an IV and gave me some, what's it called? Saline solution, whatever it is they give you, just to keep me hydrated while I was sitting there. And even though I drink a gallon of water a day, I had for years at that point, I've continued for years beyond that, my weight was up 4 pounds the next day from probably the combination of stress and that fluid. And I just thought that was weird. Really weird, because I drink a lot of water all day, and I wasn't in the hospital overnight or anything. I was there from about 7:30 in the morning until early afternoon, and a friend drove me back home. So it's not like I was plugged in getting juiced up with the solution for 24 hours straight or anything like that. So it was just strange to me that my weight went up 4 pounds. And the reason I pay attention to that is because I weigh myself daily. It's just part of how I manage my weight. I'm not someone who believes in throwing out the scale. I think it's just an inanimate object that can be a tool, kind of like checking your pulse or a Fitbit, and that it doesn't have to be a measure of your self-worth. So there you go. 3 things I learned from my first trip to the ER as an adult. If you have a business, you're wanting to start a business, maybe you're a copywriter, whatever it is you do, I do want to encourage you to manage that stress, even if you're not in business. But having a business, weirdly, we get into it for the freedom and the relief, and then you find out there's actually quite a lot more to it than the marketing, just make 15 grand a day in your sleep crap you see online makes it sound like. I'm not saying it's impossible to make 15 grand in your sleep, but it's probably going to take some time and a lot of effort and probably a lot of financial investment to get to that point. And then you've got to maintain what you're doing to get to that point. So it's not quite as airy-fairy as a lot of the online marketing makes it sound. And I get why they don't say that, because if they did, if you knew what all there was to it, fewer and fewer people would try it. And maybe that would be for the better, honestly, knowing what I know now and my own journey. But I'm grateful to be where I am at the same time. And I've learned that it is so important to manage your stress. If something happens to you in your business, depending on how it's structured, it could be in a lot of trouble. And even if you've structured it to where it can run without you, it still sucks. It still sucks to have stress eroding your body and leading you to these moments where the body basically says, you need to change or I'm taking you down, as a way to protect you. You haven't been listening to me, so I've taken all I can take, and it's time for a change. And I don't know what it is about humans. We seem to need to learn those lessons the hard way a few times. I've learned that one more than once, and I'm hoping that by sharing it with you, you will make better choices than I did. Not that mine were the worst in the world. Again, healthy eating and everything, but still, even if you're very healthy, stress can get you. So please clean up your diet if it's not clean. Get some movement in, that can help. And then just get the mind in a place where things that you're applying a meaning to that stresses you out, work on applying different meanings so that you don't end up with a weird trip to the ER with frozen hands and twitching mouth or and a racing heart, or however it shows up for you. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it as always. And before I go, if you happen to be a business owner who needs content, whether you're new or you're more established, I invite you to go to my website, AndreaDell.com. I'll put the link in the description here, and sign up for my current free offer, 7 Ways to Stop the Scroll. These are 7 different types of content that, in my experience, has a very good chance of getting attention from the people you're trying to reach. And it works for videos like this. It works for, or much more animated videos. It works for written content and emails on social posts. You can combine it with photos. You can even use it as inspiration for podcasts. So they're universal. They're not limited to one particular industry, nothing like that. And yet they're specific enough, and I give you examples with each one that you can kind of go, okay, I see how I might be able to use that. All right. So again, go to AndreaDell.com and click one of the red buttons, and you'll be able to sign up for it. And then stick around on my email list, and you will see me use these things and other content strategies on a daily-ish basis. And of course, I'll have offers to work together in some capacity if you decide that interests you. If not, you can always unsubscribe. So again, AndreaDell.com, 7 Ways to Stop the Scroll. And thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.